This episode is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Become a patron today at patreon.com/into the portal. (1584), somewhere in the Atlantic. Small waves lapped up against the side of the ship as the crew was beginning to awaken to a rising sun. On the horizon was a faint line, a silhouette blurred by distance and light. For weeks at a time, there was nothing to see but the horizon, and a vast emptiness that lay before them. The men, forever hopeful of once again setting foot on solid land. This was the beginning of a wave of expeditions arranged by Sir Walter Raleigh, privateer, military man, and reigning confidant of Queen Elizabeth I. Their ambition? To establish hubs for attacking and raiding Spanish galleons, loaded with treasures of the New World. After several attempts at staking a claim on the island of Roanoke off the Carolina coast, a third expedition carrying 117 souls from England embarked to the New World in 1587. But when they finally arrived, they found none of what the previous expeditions left behind. Only the bleached bones of one lone skeleton remain in the sand. The settlers were abandoned in a quagmire of conflict and other tangled political factors. Violence and danger awaited them in the nearby forest from neighboring indigenous tribes who had been attacked and provoked by the English before. Food was scarce, disease was setting in, and they finally pleaded with John White, governor of the newly dubbed Virginia, to return to England for supplies and support. White would embark to England with the intention of returning quickly, but when he finally did arrive, he would find nothing of what he expected. The mystery of Roanoke and its vanished inhabitants remains unsolved to this day, an enduring mystery with clues pulling the search in many different directions. Join us on Into the Portal for a historical mystery steeped in the conflicts between indigenous populations, warmongering privateers, and the political ambitions of the Spanish and English crowns.
Hello, and welcome back into the portal. I'm Amber Ray.
And I'm Andrew McKay. Welcome back, everybody, to what I consider to be a very special episode this week, because we're getting back into a really cool historical mystery.
We are, yes.
A lot of people will know, but I'm really excited about it. But before we jump right in...
Exactly. Before we jump right in, we actually have a special dedication this week as well. Because when we first started this show... generally, we were asking our friends, our family for suggestions, mysteries that they knew of that they'd want to learn more about. And one of my cousins, Lou, he reached out to us while he was in the UK, studying at Oxford, and he actually requested this topic. Right. So, Lou, it is your birthday. Well, it was your birthday this last week, so we are dedicating this to you.
Cool. Yeah.
But also, we do have some reviews.
Yeah, we have a couple of just quick little things to go over. Yeah, we have some new reviews, which was awesome. Mm-hmm. So we had 2 from Canada and 1 from the UK. Do you want to start with the Canadian ones?
Yeah. This one was from Copperpot. Copperpot 77. It was a 5-star. Fresh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, great podcast with hosts that are really engaging. The topics they cover are unique and aren't from the standard list of similar themed podcasts.
Nice.
There
That's
you go.
A good sign.
Oh, sorry, the standard hit list of similar themed podcasts.
Cool.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Sweet.
I like being a little bit off the beaten track. I know that we have covered ones that are a tiny bit more mainstream as well. We kind of dip back and forth, but...
It's kind of funny because the one we're covering today is like more mainstream for sure. But
it is.
But it's so unique too. So
it is.
That's a great review though.
Yeah. What about you? You got one over there from
the UK?
Yeah,
we had one from the UK, and we only had one previous one from the UK. So I was stoked to see this. So this is from 04 Big E, 5-star review. It reads, "The 2 hosts of this podcast are brilliant." I don't know about that, but thank you, sir. They work fantastically well together, and every week provide top quality podcasts that are well researched and presented. I had to sign up to their Patreon subscription just to hear some extra content and provide them with the support to hopefully keep this great podcast going for years to come. If you like strangeness, weirdness, paranormal, or mystery, then I implore you to give this podcast a try. You will not be disappointed. That was awesome. Thank you so much for that review.
Yes.
And yeah, we will hopefully we'll be doing this for many years to come. So.
I know, right? And we had one more. I just want to read quickly. This was another Canadian one by Recent Olive. It was a 5-star.
Oh,
and
nice.
It says here, it is a fun, interesting, and well-researched podcast with down-to-earth hosts.
Cool.
Aw, thanks,
That's a
guys.
nice compliment.
Appreciate that.
Word.
But even on that note, that was in the last review you covered from the UK.
New Patreon member.
Yeah, we had a couple this week, and I am so stoked on it. Like,
Yeah, it's
beyond
pretty cool.
stoked.
Yeah. And good feedback from the first few mini episodes we have up there too. Like
True.
The members that have been enjoying them. So
Yes.
it's cool.
So we did want to give a special shout out to Ian Tarver.
Yes.
Thank you so much, as well as Matthew Plum and Joy Bouchard.
Yeah.
So thanks, guys.
Yeah, welcome to the Patreon community with, we're stoked to have those guys. It's pretty cool.
Definitely. Look forward to those rewards coming in the mail pretty quick there.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. One last thing before we jump right in here. We almost honestly totally forgot that we even had a TeePublic site.
Wow.
Not really.
We kind of remembered
like,
last week.
Yeah.
And then we had some more people purchase some stuff, so we were like, sweet.
Yeah.
And so we actually went ahead and we put up a 30% off deal right now with TeePublic. So you can get, I don't know, sweet wall tapestry, mugs,
stickers, shirts, like all kinds of cool
tees.
stuff. And like it's
Super soft
and it's
tees.
back to school time too, right? So like a lot of our listeners I know have little ones and things like that. So you can get a t-shirt or whatever, like clothes
Aw,
and stuff for
so
back
cute.
to school.
Little
Ogo Pogo on
adventures.
there, little things like that, little adventure stuff. So
Yep.
it helps out the show a ton. And we love to just the idea of people rocking the ITP logo and things like that.
Exactly.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, oh man.
So I think we're ready to jump into it.
Let's do it.
And this week, we are talking about the legendary lost colony of Roanoke. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, a lot of people are going to be familiar with this just by name. They may not be familiar with the story in its entirety. But
I feel like the name has a certain sort of prestige, certain veneer about it that people will be like, oh yeah, that does sound familiar.
It is one of the world's most enduring mysteries, really.
Well, it's like 400 years, right?
Yeah, totally. It's right up there with like almost. It reminds me of like it's not similar really, but of Oak Island, just because it's another North American one. Yeah, it's just this has been a mystery for a long time, and it's one of the ones that obviously involves a disappearance too. So that's like the crux of it, right? But there's so much detail embedded into this, so this is going to be broken into 2 parts.
Yeah.
But let's jump right into it. So it sort of starts with we wanted to give obviously the origins of the story because a lot of like documentaries you'll find when you go on YouTube and stuff like that will just start with the missing colony.
Yeah, they'll start right from the disappearance.
Yeah. But
such is the case as with Leonard Nimoy, right?
Exactly, right? Yeah, like we watched,
In Search of.
the classic In Search of.
I believe it was like 1977 that one came out.
And they're so much fun, but obviously they miss a ton of detail. And the thing with this that we discovered looking into it is that the bulk of the detail is before the disappearance.
It really is. It's the lead up.
Yeah, the lead up, that's important. So
critical, yeah.
It all sort of begins with, more or less, with this character named Sir Walter Raleigh. And sort of pronounced either Raleigh or Rayleigh. I'm going to go with Raleigh.
I feel like Raleigh's the more
common. It sounds more English.
Raleigh. And I'm pretty sure in Elizabeth the Golden Age, they said Raleigh.
Okay.
So Clive Owen,
Clive, then it must be
Clive,
true.
Yep.
Love Clive Owen.
I came up with some details. Well, actually, in the movie, they go off about that, how, like, Queen Elizabeth had an affair. Well, no, didn't have an affair, but was in love with him.
With Sir Walter Raleigh.
Yeah, which does play into the theories later on in this mystery. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, it starts with this guy, Walter Raleigh, and he was born into a well-connected gentry family in Hayes Barton in Devon in UK. I don't know exactly where that is, but this was in and around 1552.
I'm surprised it's not Devonshire.
Devonshire. No
Yeah.
doubt, right? He attended Oxford University for a little while, and he was associated with other accolades such as fighting with the Huguenots in France. And then he would later go back to London and study law and sort of work his way into high society there.
The Huguenots. Is that like...
So that was like... we should know this.
Well, there was a civil war in France.
Yeah.
And so he was heavily involved in that. He was quite brutal, wasn't he? Like
he was like an he was a privateer, but he was like a military man too. He was known for some pretty intense stuff. Like, allegedly in Ireland was responsible for or was it in Ireland?
I can't remember.
There was a
Ireland or
massacre
France.
in Ireland, but then there was another one involving the Spanish, where he basically was involved in a capture of multiple Spanish ships and decapitated 500 people.
Brutal.
I mean, not personally, obviously, but I'm sure he had a couple heads in there, and then the rest were under his order. So
Just lopped off a couple.
different time, let's just say that. Pretty ruthless stuff.
Jeez.
But anyway, he kind of came to the attention of Queen Elizabeth I in the late 1500s, well, the 1580s, early 1580s, I should say. Mm-hmm. And this came about when he actually went to Ireland to help suppress an uprising there in the area of Munster. So he became a favorite of the Queen. He was a confidant of her, and he was knighted and appointed the captain of a group called the Queen's Guard, 1587. I believe was the date for this.
He was really highly revered by her. Hey, almost to the point where he was considered almost like an oracle. And he intimidated a lot of her court.
Yes. Yeah, and she went to him for basically anything having to do either with, military ventures or, obviously in this case, like we're getting into, with colonization and discovery, exploration, and that kind of stuff.
Even, I remember reading in one article, he had quite a lot to do, he kind of rose to prominence in regard to, like you said, the Irish sort of debacle, or whatever you want to call it, where it basically was being led by someone else, and then he stepped in with a totally different plan. And she actually brought them both to court, both of these guys. So he was kind of put up against his competition, so to speak, right on the spot, and he wowed her. And then after that, she was like, okay, you're my new sort of authority in this field, and I'm just going to take your word for it.
Yeah, and it boded well for him, obviously, because he received extensive estates in Ireland and other parts of the UK, and hundreds and hundreds of acres of land and castles and whatever else, right? He was obviously an extremely wealthy man. But anyway, he basically had an opportunity to become even more wealthy because he kind of picked up the slack of work done by his half-brother, who was an explorer as well, that actually made it all the way over to the New World. And apparently, I don't know if I didn't have time to look into this one thing. It's not that significant, but apparently his half-brother drowned, passed away on his way back to a sort of not well established, but a tentative fishing colony in the area of Newfoundland. And it was just they were moving up and down the coast at this time, but there wasn't any colonies yet.
An outpost.
An outpost.
A trade post.
Yeah, because they were looking for places to colonize. So basically, anyway, this gets relayed back, and Raleigh kind of, Raleigh rather.
Gets relayed back to Raleigh.
Gets relayed back to Raleigh. And he sort of kind of took over this as the opportunity to establish a colony.
Very interesting. He's quite a colorful character, this guy.
Yeah, he really is.
And honestly, I remember I read this one thing. This is just from Wikipedia, though, so I don't know if it's real or not. But he apparently is credited with introducing tobacco to England from the New World. Yeah,
because his expeditions would have been some of those earliest ones, trading with the indigenous peoples that farmed tobacco. That was one of their main things, right? Yeah, it's really, really cool. So on March 25th, 1584, Queen Elizabeth granted him the charter for colonization in the area of North America that his brother had gone, and gave him those rights. And if he didn't follow through on it, though, he would lose his right to colonization. So he was pretty hell-bent on making this happen.
Pretty determined.
Because he was a privateer, and whether it was just colonizing for the sake of the crown, or also having the opportunity to raid Spanish galleons and things like that, there was some mixed reasons for this endeavor.
That's very interesting. And because Raleigh is sort of the central pivot, right, in this whole story, later on, when we do get into theories, right, one of them does involve his role in the court and potential people that didn't want, they weren't wishing him well, that's for sure. So
many people didn't care for him.
Exactly, because he was this golden boy, so to speak, of Elizabeth.
Right.
And like I alluded to, there was this strange plot that was brought to light in that Elizabeth the Golden Age, which is a lot of speculation, but supposedly she loved him so much that she actually, to maintain her virginal status, obviously she didn't have an affair with him, but what she did was that she set him up with one of her maids-in-waiting, and she basically enjoyed their affair from a distance. Yeah, but it's weird though, because there is this one account that kind of, so eventually these two actually got married. I'm just gonna call him Clive Owen. Clive and the chick, whatever, the lady in waiting.
Well.
Oh yeah, he's gonna be around. He's like the new What's it called?
Countess St. Germain.
Countess St. Germain. But anyways, yeah, apparently there was this one story, though, where they got married secretly, and then Elizabeth found out about a year later and was furious and imprisoned both of them. So I'm not sure, like, how aware she was or not, but they were definitely taking a risk, that's for sure. So anyways, that's a total side note. Okay, so basically we're at the point where Raleigh has established his right to colonize North America on behalf of the English crown.
Yeah.
And so this starts out in 1584 was the first expedition.
Yes.
And Raleigh, although he never stepped foot on American soil...
We keep switching back and forth between Raleigh and Raleigh already.
Shoot. Sorry, Raleigh, Raleigh. It's just the spelling looks different.
It flip-flops in the spelling from different sources, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Anyway, let's go with Raleigh. I like Raleigh. So let's say Raleigh himself, he never stepped foot on American soil.
No.
But he was the leader of these expeditions, so we will be referring to him as that.
Yeah. Officially, he led the expeditions.
Exactly. So he definitely guided them. I'm not sure how much communication there was between them after they left for England. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if there were other ships along the way that they could have passed letters to that were on their way.
Or if they stopped at lower ports before making their way up to Roanoke and left
things
messages.
like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure they had some way of communicating over...
Super duper slow.
Exactly.
Obviously.
Yeah. Not very well connected.
Yeah.
But anyways, they did have a really good first expedition, and they established fairly positive relationships with the North American natives they found.
Yeah.
It was actually interesting. Supposedly, the first instance of contact recorded by the English in the area was it was instigated by a lone native man that bravely approached an English ship in his canoe. Yeah. And this ship in particular was led by Arthur Barlow and Philip Amadas on behalf of Raleigh.
Yes.
And they ended up sailing.
So that was the first instance of contact.
And it was positive, right? And they weren't really sure. Obviously, they were on their guard. I would imagine they had their guns at ready, so to speak. But it was just kind of awkward, and they were kind of using, the typical...
Just hand gestures and stuff and trying to figure things out. But that was right from that point on is when... I can't remember the name. We have it further down, but there was a man that started to try to develop... a dictionary for the Algonquin language and stuff so that they could communicate.
That's when they went back.
Yeah, that was a little later on. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, so that's actually really relevant because on this first expedition, one of the most important things that happened was these two native men, Manteo and Wanchese. Wanchese? I don't know.
I think it's,
Wanchese. They were two, I don't even know if I want to call them volunteers, but they did come back with Barlow, the captain of the ship, and they were actually not from the same tribe. So one was from the Roanoke tribe. I believe that was Manteo.
Other way around. Manteo was Croatoan.
Manteo's Croatoan.
Croatan.
Croatan. And Wanchese was actually...
Roanoke.
Wanchese. I just want to say Wanchese.
Just say Wanchese.
Yeah. So they're neighboring tribes. One, Manteo was actually supposedly, in some accounts, he's actually the chief of... But I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I feel like that's
ranking.
probably...
I feel like just a trusted member of the group, obviously. Not a young, whatever. But probably not the outright chief of the...
That's why I say, in some accounts. Because in others, they just say he is high ranking.
Yeah.
So anyways, they both are Algonquin-speaking natives. And they were both residing in what is now coastal North Carolina.
Okay.
And, they were the two of the earliest American indigenous peoples to enter into English record overall.
Right.
And obviously they were integral to the establishment of these relations by the English. And especially they were important to Raleigh because their testimony and just their presence in general was a huge propaganda tool that he could use to garner support to establish plans for a colony.
Definitely. These guys, because they came and Barlow wrote... they realized as soon as they got there, they were there's so much abundance here. He wrote, the quote was hilarious. It was something this is the goodliest land we had ever seen in our lives, or something like that, right?
Exactly.
And so they needed to, you can't take a photograph. They had people, drawing and taking topographical things and stuff, but they needed to
They had White doing that, actually.
They had John, exactly.
John White.
John White.
He's another important character.
But obviously bringing back somebody who could describe in vivid detail the landscape, the politics, and all this kind of stuff, that meant Manteo and Wanchese were able to do.
That's actually interesting, though, because they wouldn't have been able to communicate that because they don't speak English. So if you don't speak Algonquin,
not yet. They didn't yet. Like Manteo, obviously, they developed communication enough for them to bring them back and tell them all these details, right?
Exactly. And so this is where Thomas Harriot comes into play. He was described as linguistically talented. I'm assuming he was a very educated Englishman, because otherwise how the heck would he be able to do what he did? And what he did do was actually he learned Algonquin, and he created, like he said, a detailed dictionary.
Right, okay.
So this was the tool that unlocked the secrets of the New World, essentially. And so what he did is he developed an alphabet of 36 symbols that expressed... This is a quote, "to express the Virginian speech and any other spoken language from the Americas or Europe." So he actually sat down with Manteo and Wanchese. Manteo, who was loving his stay, Wanchese wasn't really. He actually, soon after landing on English shores, he basically thought of himself as a prisoner.
Right.
But anyways, he did sat down with him, and daily, and this was to glean as much information as he possibly could. He definitely wanted to know... Basically, what he wanted to know was their culture, their way of life, their war, and then especially the Roanoke Island region. He wanted to know what kind of resources there were and how best to prepare for the first landing of a colony.
Right.
So that was very, very interesting. And obviously, the information they were giving was something they wanted to hear. And so Rayleigh decides to organize a second expedition, which is to be led by a... Sir Richard Grenville.
That's right. Sir Richard Grenville.
Another character that's just a little bit...
Yeah. So this guy, again, just like Raleigh, who apparently Richard Grenville is actually his cousin. I mean, everybody seems to be cousins with everybody back in the day here. Like, your cousin's your dad, and your dad's your uncle, and your cousin's your everybody. I don't even know. Like, everyone seems to be interconnected somehow. It's crazy. But anyway... Richard Grenville gets sent back essentially, because of this testimony and this information that they gleaned from these two indigenous men that they brought back. And they were there for about 8 months, I believe.
It's amazing they didn't die of disease, hey?
It is, quite frankly. Like, they were obviously just in areas that were so, like, very well kept, right? Like, and not exposed to any, like, uncleanliness or whatever.
True.
Like,
and not even that, but, like, Rayleigh basically kept them under wraps. He was very controlling as to where they went, what they did, who they spoke to. And when they
dressed them up. So they dressed them up like Englishmen and basically told people what they needed to tell them depending on the situation. And there was one instance that I remember reading where there were some German... diplomats or something that saw them and were making some interesting comments about how they looked like, I don't even know, I can't remember exactly what it was, or maybe it was Russian, like as if maybe they looked like some indigenous Siberians or something like that.
Oh, I heard accounts, no, not Siberian, that some people took them to be Moors.
Oh, okay. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they were
that
obviously, I mean, you must...
Arabic. That, like, not Arabic, but you know what I mean. Like, a little bit darker, more olivey. Exactly.
Yes.
And the Moors were definitely, they were almost like gypsies. They were not...
nomadic. And
they were not well revered in their communities. They actually went through some expulsions. I remember during the Carolingian era of Europe, in my medieval history class, I learned about that. The Spanish expulsions of the Moors back in, like, I don't even know, like the 13th and 12th century. I don't even know.
So, like, they must have felt like they were definitely put on a bit of a... I mean, they weren't...
especially, like, what's his name, Wanchese, right? Because, like, if he's forced to dress in this strange garb and conform to all these rules, and he's just like, you know what, I'm really not feeling this.
Right.
And he's stuck there. Like, what else are you gonna do?
And that's kind of the thing, like, that I wrote this question in here just for us. It's just like, it seems strange that they would go so willingly to a new place. Like, even
how
if you
willingly
are...
was it?
That's my question, right? That's exactly my
were
question. Was it kind of a 50-50? Yeah, were they tricked, or was it possibly...
things? Or promised things on behalf of their tribe?
Most certainly, yeah. Because what benefit you're not just going to do it just out of curiosity?
Exactly.
You'd think, right? So, but yeah. So anyway, that's what happened, and so because of this, we get a second expedition. So these two men end up returning, and they get back to Roanoke among the second wave, and it's financed by Raleigh and his now deceased brother and the Crown. And upon their return, the two men's place in history kind of diverges. So Manteo, who was a Croatoan, he's still serving as an interpreter and guide, but he's still around. Whereas the other guy, Wanchese, he goes right back into his local Roanoke groups and basically disconnects himself from his experience that he's just had.
He's probably like scarred for life.
Yeah, I mean, he may have felt ill-treated by the English like throughout the trip. It's tough to say, right? Like, I don't know.
It's interesting, too, that even on their return, they wouldn't have brought back potential germs or disease or anything that would... You never know, though. Maybe they did, and we just don't know. We don't have the record. Well,
that definitely ties into the part 2 and theories section and things like that, too. But, I mean, it's definitely possible that he would have thought after being there that he saw these colonists now as a threat to his people, where unlike Manteo, who... I don't know, different vibe. Like, their people are on a different island, and he's just got a totally different vibe with all this stuff, I guess, right? I mean...
He's not vibing.
He's just feeling fine about it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, not Wanchese. Manteo's feeling fine.
Yeah. So, yeah, in this expedition, it was 7 ships that came from England with Sir Richard Raleigh, and some of them went further south and kind of like, you know, would have landed in the area of just north of Florida and stuff like that, where there were Spanish ships.
Oh, okay.
And then worked their way up the coast.
I see.
Finally arriving in the area of Roanoke in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. But this guy, Richard Grenville, was a piece of work. I mean, he was something else, this guy. So, I mean, unlike the first expedition, that was really positive, things weren't so positive this time, right? So, and this was partly because he was a sea dog. Let's just call it that, literally.
Okay.
So he was a privateer employed by the British Crown, and these guys were known as the Sea Dogs of the Queen because they were kind of ruthless, and they basically, their jobs were just that. They were pirates. They were just paid pirates is all it is, right? You're raiding, you're killing for profit, and you're giving a cut of it back to the crown, which
That's
makes it
the interesting
okay.
part, too, about this whole thing, because it's almost like there's 2 different goals, right? Or one is a cover for the actual motive, right, for being in the New World. Perhaps, like you suggested this earlier, Andrew, how Queen Elizabeth, she wasn't really interested in a colony per se.
Right.
But she did want to have, like,
posts.
Perhaps, an outpost so that they could have these strongholds.
They needed to be able to attack the Spanish.
They really just wanted Spanish gold. Because the Spanish had a pretty lucrative thing going on at the time in South America and Central America.
Yeah, the English were pretty much thinking that they missed the boat on that one, right?
They
pun intended. And they did. And so here they are up in different, anyway, yeah.
They're just trying to reap the benefits.
Pretty much.
Off the Spanish backs.
Yeah. So the other important thing just to note about this is, like, obviously his crew is, like, they're essentially pirates. So it's like they have some skills. It's a hodgepodge group of guys, right? Like from mining backgrounds or other trades backgrounds, different things like that. But they're not necessarily the type of people that would be able to survive extended periods of time, like in a new world. They weren't really the group to be establishing a colony. They were the ones there to stake a claim to get things started, more or less.
Okay.
And things were going okay at first. Like, they had all kinds of stuff to live off of. So they get there. There's obviously ample seafood. There's deer, fox, raccoon, bear, all kinds of other flora and fauna and things like that to hunt and eat. Berries and roots and seasonal things like that. And they did have friendly relations still from the previous voyage. So they were able to collect berries and things. They were able to trade. And they had, like, these glass beads and things that they would trade and different things like that. And Thomas Harriot wrote in his account, like, although the people here do not use the same science and knowledge as us, they show an incredible wit and cunning, and they show us love. End quote. So they respected these people for their abilities to survive and their wit and intellect. Yeah. And it was all going fine until
That's interesting, actually. So,
oh, no,
until...
Sorry.
Oh, I just noticed, though, that Thomas Harriot, obviously, he's the same one that came up with the dictionary.
Yeah.
So he came back with them.
Yeah.
And then White, we have to establish, too, White is on both of these expeditions. And he is the one that... he's the illustrator. So he's basically trying to capture images of all the wonders of the
So John White, just to clarify here, is the father of Eleanor White and Eleanor White Dare, and then and ends up being Virginia Dare. His granddaughter is born in the New World, and he's
not only that, he is the governor of Virginia.
Right. Yeah, the first appointed governor of Virginia. Yes,
but not until later. Exactly. Not at this moment. There is no Virginia at this moment.
No, nothing. So he was there as because he was an artist. So he was drawing the Algonquin people and flora and fauna and stuff like that. So everything was fine until Richard Grenville more or less single-handedly screwed up relationships between Europeans and indigenous peoples like, for all eternity.
Forever.
I mean, the Spanish had already done a really good job.
You're looking for someone to blame him.
Literally, this is what happened here. The story goes that things were fine, hunky-dory, up until a silver cup was allegedly stolen from the English camp.
Great.
Okay?
Okay.
Literally just a cup.
A cup.
A cup.
The only thing useful in this world is just to hold water.
Yeah.
Or other things.
Okay, so, and this is obviously highly debatable whether or not we would have stolen this or not. They're still becoming accustomed to the cultural differences and stuff. They've been trading different things back and forth. This silver cup isn't going to have monetary value to the Roanoke people. It would have just been possibly thought of as a gesture or whatever,
a gift of sorts, right? Because they were exchanging lots of things.
Yeah, exactly.
And so perhaps what the natives, I would imagine, because like obviously these people are getting food from them, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So maybe they're like, well, if we're giving them all this stuff, then why can't we? Like,
exactly.
Who knows? Misunderstanding.
Unfortunately, that misunderstanding ends up taking a really grim turn because Grenville, being the tyrant that he was and sort of the pirate mind, his response was to basically sneak into the village, ambush the indigenous peoples there, and burn their village and crops to the ground.
Great.
Now, this is not only incredibly reactionary and stupid, but you're also burning the very same food that you need to trade for to survive. So, really dumb.
Yeah.
Really, really dumb.
So hot-headed there.
Yeah. So, basically, this destroyed relationships, obviously, with the local Roanoke peoples.
And all trust, I would imagine.
Yes. And, of course, Grenville, being the guy he was, doesn't really need to stick around to deal with it. He's like, well, I'm a privateer, so I'm going to keep going doing my thing, but you guys need to stake this claim. He leaves back to England and leaves behind a crew of 108 people under the leadership of a man named Ralph Lane to essentially hold on to the territory, of what he still wanted to be a stronghold for the English attacking Spanish ships, among other things. Allegedly a full-out colony. Is that actually the case? At this point in time, I don't know, because people don't seem that concerned about the people there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he left his men in a situation that was obviously crazy difficult. So they're low in supplies. They don't really know that much about the climate and natural resources other than the basics. And now they've pissed off every single other person on that island.
Exactly. So now they're living in a hostile environment. And on top of that, they don't really have the survival skills necessary other than, say, the guns they have with them. I would imagine they could probably shoot something and just roast it on a spit. That'd be their only way of...
But it's but
even then,
tough, right?
what about even just accommodations? Are they able to build houses?
Well,
It'd probably be pretty crude.
They had
structures.
some basic structures and stuff like that. The problem with hunting at this point in time is now obviously you'd have to have hunting parties of more than a few people, because anybody that was straying out on their own because of the recent attack that they led, people were getting killed. You go out to hunt and you get shot with an arrow. You go to do this.
Hostile,
so people didn't want to leave
yeah.
by themselves.
Yeah.
And obviously hunting with big groups of people isn't very effective. So, yeah. There were obviously there were some attacks on the colony. Or, well, I'm going to call it a colony just for sake of just making it easy to understand. But it wasn't. It was just a temporary stronghold.
The group.
They fended off some of these attacks, and there was some tense situations and small pockets of people basically that would try to attack them. And then again, there were small groups that, after a small period of time, kind of came around, and they were okay. They still were wanting the goods that these Englishmen had, and so they were trading food with them, but not enough to really make things
it was a hard winter.
Comfortable. So Ralph Lane wrote in a letter back to England, "If the natives do not help us, we will starve like a starving horse in a stable."
What?
Yeah. really profound way of phrasing it there, Ralph.
Like a starving horse in a stable. What does that mean? They're just trapped? Is that kind of what he's implying?
I think probably could come up with a better...
the farming is super hard, eh?
Yeah.
Well, maybe you just suck at growing things. But, yeah, no, if you've made hostile relations with the only people that could educate you in those things, then you're obviously kind of screwed.
Yeah.
Not a very good way to go about it, boys.
No, exactly right. So these men were essentially, they're waiting around for Grenville to come back because he said he was going to be back in April. What was the exact date on that again? I think we had...
April. Well, no, we didn't have an exact date.
Okay.
It's just April 1586.
Okay, so he was supposed to be back sometime in 1586. He never comes back, and this is obviously not working out. So basically, what happens is like the chief of the Roanokes is kind of realizing too that like they can't survive either because there's still small pockets of people trading with these last groups of settlers and stuff like that. There's still some clashes going back and forth. He basically decides to, the winter earlier, is that correct? He moves the Roanokes off the island for a time?
The chief, yeah, he decided that same winter that the 108 were there, stranded, like, you know what I mean? The chief, it was tough, right? Because, okay, so you have 108 men that are foreigners, and then you have a tribe that, in some accounts, it was close to 300. So that's straining your resources. So what he did in order to save his own men and his own community, he decided to move them off the island.
So then spring comes around, and essentially Ralph Lane and his men are pretty choked, and Lane leads an attack on the Roanoke people. So once again, obviously just leading to more and more worsening of the relationships. And
it was. We actually had, we watched a couple different documentaries on this, and it was kind of sneaky what he did. Like, he brought his men under the pretense of discussing, potential peace or, trade or something, trying to reestablish relations. And then what he did is he had a code word. Do you remember what that was, code word? Off the top of my head, I can't, but we didn't write it down, unfortunately. But he had a code word, and he yelled it out, and essentially on his command, the entire,
it was something to do with the queen or something, or like something.
Homeland,
something along those lines.
Yeah, for the motherland, I don't know.
Something like, well.
He said something like that. It was like a battle cry.
Yeah.
But, anyways, so they ended up just,
ambushing, attacking them. The chief, Waninga, it was shot twice, but didn't die. He was running into the forest, and Lane sent the fastest man in his group to chase him down and beheaded the chief of the Roanoke.
Lovely. Great.
So, that's pretty gruesome, obviously. And still at this point, obviously, Grenville had still not returned. Luckily, I guess you could say, for these people, luckily for the English colonists or settlers or whatever, Sir Francis Drake rolls up. So,
boom,
Sir Francis Drake, just sort of brief bio on him. He was another privateer. He was a sea captain, slave trader, explorer, all-around ruthless guy.
He's a triple threat.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Anytime you have slave trader on your resume, that's something, you're a real peach. So anyway, but these guys wanted to get off this island, obviously, so they hitched a ride with Sir Francis Drake.
I don't blame them. They were just dropped into a hornet's nest.
Pretty much. So Grenville arrives, obviously long after his crews obviously abandoned this outpost, and he's forced to leave behind just a skeleton crew because he was hoping there'd be still some left alive holding on to the outpost.
Yeah.
He only had 15 men that he could leave.
He could spare.
So
he just basically sentenced those guys to death.
Essentially. So he left 15 men to hold on to, once again, this Roanoke outpost. And that brings us up to our third expedition.
So, okay, Grenville, he obviously had to do this because otherwise I'm wondering what sort of time frame Raleigh had as far as maintaining this colony so he could maintain his charter and his his declaration from the crown.
Yeah.
Because that to me kind of speaks to the desperation of Grenville, right? Why would you do that? What the heck is so valuable there that you have to maintain this outpost? Can't you just reestablish one somewhere else?
I don't know. I mean, I have a feeling that he just doesn't really care about these 15 guys. He's like, whatever, Crown wants me to do this.
He's doing his due diligence.
He's like, yep, okay, you guys are here.
You're
going to get great things when the colonists will be here anytime, and you'll be already here, and it's all going to be hunky-dory, and of course.
All right, so third expedition. So this is when we actually get the settlers that would be part of this lost colony arriving.
Right.
And it was about July 1587. 117 different people, a mix of various walks of life, set out from England, and they were tasked with the job of forming the first English colony in the New World.
Yeah. Pretty profound. First
colony, first community. Yeah. They were bringing over, I'm not sure if there was actual children, but they were bringing families.
Oh, for sure. There was young kids, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so this is based, families, obviously there'd be kids involved then. So people like noblemen were there, tradesmen, women with skills, weaving, all sorts of like obviously cooking,
farmers,
all that kind
of course, and things like
farmers.
that. Although they had a tough time with the land.
Yeah,
but
well, that might not have been their fault.
Indeed.
Anyways, so they were led by John White. He was appointed governor of Virginia.
Yes.
And he actually proclaimed Virginia in honor of the Virgin Queen.
Right.
When they arrived. So again, yeah, I guess. And we already mentioned this before, the fact that he was with Grenville on previous expeditions.
Yeah.
He traveled numerous times that's why he was essentially chosen to be governor, is because he did have this familiarity.
Totally. Expert math maker.
But unfortunately, that means that he also could have been slightly colored by these previous expeditions and the sea dog like nature of these people.
Yes.
So he's bringing families though. So this is just like kind of like really awkward. So again, he was accompanied, like we mentioned, by his daughter, Eleanor White, who was pregnant, as well as his son-in-law, Ananias Dare. So they were married, and so she's pregnant. Oh my goodness. Anyways, okay.
Yeah, could you imagine that journey, like, in that state?
No. And I couldn't even imagine being in that state in general. So anyways, that's a whole different ballgame.
Fair enough.
Whole different can of worms then. But anyways, yeah, so the colony was never supposed to be established at Roanoke.
Right. Which is a weird part of the story, really.
Well, it factors into theories later on, especially Miller's theory. But anyways, that's in our second part. What I did want to touch on right now was the fact that it was supposed to actually be in Chesapeake Bay, which is a little bit further north. It's a lot more inland. It's a lot bigger of a bay, and it has deeper water. It's just more
sheltered.
More sheltered, more viable in general, more resources, right? Because Roanoke Island is just that. It's an island, and there's limited resources. Yeah. So all of these people that chose, all 117, were promised 500 acres of land along the Chesapeake shore. So that's a pretty big incentive.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
And so actually what happened was so White was their governor. The commander of the ship, however, was a man named Fernandez. And he was much more interested in privateering than actually assisting the colonists, which that's actually painting him in a favorable light, because others will say that he straight up sabotaged it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to that later.
Get to it later. I feel like we're pulling a astonishing legend.
Shout out to Scott and Forrest. What's up, guys?
Hey guys. But anyways, so they were supposed to be established up further the coast in Chesapeake Bay, but instead they were dropped in Roanoke, and this was actually so they stopped there to grab those 15 people that were left by Grenville. They were
still alive.
Exactly. Unfortunately. What did they find? They found a bleached skeleton on the beach. They found nothing else. No other bodies. They found the fort entirely wrecked. It was just abandoned and burned and whatever else. And it was a pretty dismal scene.
The fate of those 15 men is most likely massacred by the local indigenous people.
It actually is. And it's kind of funny because, like, there was a lot of things that didn't go as planned. The colonists were in a very dire situation even before they landed at Roanoke. So there was the fact that they did not get to stop in a port in the Caribbean after they sailed the Atlantic to get salt. That would be crucial for preservation of all their foods, their meat, all that kind of stuff. As well, they didn't get any fresh water. They didn't get any other additional supplies. So that put them in a very tough position.
Totally.
And it was the entire fault of Fernandez. So again, it was his... He did. He literally sabotaged them. And White was furious, apparently. He wrote about this in his journals. And he wanted to make sure that the English crown, was aware of the actions of this man, because it wasn't adding up to him.
And he's got a Spanish name.
Okay,
ominous.
Yeah, so there you go. That is an angle. The Spanish do kind of come into play into one of these theories. But, yeah, Fernandez...
Because that's totally not the route either, right? Like, so like earlier on when we were talking about Barlow and Amadis, which is also a sort of a Spanish-sounding name, But they looped through, so they came down through Cannery Islands and then got supplies there, like you said, excuse me, salt, fresh water, then worked their way up the coast. That is the route that they were supposed to take.
And they didn't.
You don't just go direct across the Atlantic to where Roanoke is.
They didn't go directly to, because they actually went to Puerto Rico.
Exactly.
And that's where another element, there was one colonist that departed the ship in Puerto Rico, and he plays into a sort of conspiratorial theory later on. But we're not going to touch on that right now.
Where are we at here?
Where are we at? We're at the part where Fernandez decides that he is just going to be a dick, and he basically just tells White, and he tells all of his men, all of his crew, not to let any more colonists, once they've gone on shore on Roanoke to find the 15 men left behind.
Yeah.
And they can't find them, and they just find this crappy scene, and then they're not admitted aboard the ship after. And to top it off, when they're unloading their supplies, they are actually, a lot of it's damaged during the unloading.
Really? Dropped in the water and stuff like that?
I guess. I would imagine water damage of some sort. It wasn't, the sources I saw weren't super clear, but again. So yeah, they're in dire straits. And it's another issue too with Fernandez was that he was pokey, and he actually, I think it was about a span of a month, they were kind of just sailing around, and he supposedly didn't know where they were. So he was trying to regain his wits and his...
Allegedly.
And then the reason he said that he dropped them off at Roanoke instead of traveling further up coast to where he was supposed to drop them in Chesapeake Bay was because he wanted to go plunder some Spanish gold. And supposedly, when he left them, he didn't do that. He beelined it straight back to England. So what does that say about Fernandez? Very suspicious character.
Indeed.
Very suspicious. So he puts them in this really, really, really crappy situation. Yeah. They can't plant crops because they're way too late. They landed mid-July.
Way too late in the season.
Way too late. On top of that, they find, obviously, they have inadequate housing, so they get to work on that right away, which expends a lot of energy and resources for them. And on top of that, it's super dangerous to hunt, like we mentioned. Like, there was the one guy that went crabbing. He was found dead.
Yeah.
That was I think his name was something Howe. And he wandered a little too far. And, yeah, there was huge risk. So it was bad. So there's 117 souls to feed. Many of the supplies are damaged. And they don't have... Like, finding food is an issue for these people. The only thing that is...
a light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly, is... Mateo.
Yeah, he's still kicking around with his group on Croatoan Island.
Nearby. So Croatoan Island is pretty close, to Roanoke.
Fairly close. Mm-hmm. I mean, close enough that you could move there if you had to. Let's just say that.
Right.
You can. I mean, it's not like a day trip, but it would be relatively close by.
And that was one of the signals, right? When White ends up leaving back to England for supplies in the end. They have this agreed thing, right? Where if they were to leave, they would write where they were going. So that's what plays into the clues later on.
Right.
But anyways.
So he finds Mateo.
He does. And Mateo he is faithful, and despite all his brethren basically hating the settlers and finding them just a nuisance and just expending resources that they would otherwise use in more responsible ways, he actually agrees to be their intermediary, and he sets up a date. I believe it was August 6th. It might be a few days off, I'm not sure, but he sets this date up to arrange peace between the settlers and the neighboring tribes. And that was something that White arranged through Mateo.
Right.
Yeah, so they this is just another really unfortunate form, it's almost like dominoes, right? These events that take place.
Yeah, really stupid.
Really dumb. So essentially, the day arrived and nothing was heard from the natives. White went to the spot where they were supposed to meet, and there was nothing. So he actually just took it as a sign that they were preparing for war. And he freaked out.
It's a jump to conclusions, Matt.
You're pulling that out again.
I am, because it's like if of all the conclusions to jump to, literally you sought out this guy to try to arrange peace. People aren't there. Therefore, if you
just leave him alone, man. Just leave him be.
That's just crazy sauce.
It kind of is, and it's late in the summer now. It's August 6th. They're kind of feeling a little desperate. And White, he decides that they need to attack preeminently. They need to be the first, which is dumb. You've already done that so many times, right? And he was a part of it. He was there. He saw Grenville's, like, you know, his faux pas and all this stuff. And I guess maybe he agreed with them. I don't know.
The only thing I could be thinking of here is, like, okay, he went to Manteo, and he's arranging this, trying to sort things out. But maybe just in doing that and having Manteo go to these other groups and say, hey, I'm going to try to negotiate peace. And then he realizes that they haven't shown up. Maybe he saw that, like, my only rationale there is that just that conversation between Manteo and these other groups was, like, further angered them because they have another indigenous person that's kind of, like, siding with them or who's, like, in the middle, and it just sort of stirs the pot up again. To be like, oh, like, what do you mean? Like, you're going to try to arrange, you know what I mean? But
what kind of internal politics
That's just wild speculation too, though. So,
yep.
But what happened?
What did happen? They attacked the first village they found, and they attacked the wrong tribe. Great job, boys. Good
guys.
job.
Great job. So basically, he arranges a war party, and they go out in the night, so it's dark. So they can't actually see who or where or what, and they come across the first frickin' campfire they can find in the woods.
Yeah.
And just start massacring people.
They start massacring people, and not only that, they burned their crops.
Yeah, so again...
So now everyone's in a bad place.
Okay, you need to eat those, everyone, okay? I don't know, like, the rationale here is just mind-boggling.
You'd think, like if you had guns, right, you would just, you would set up your own perimeter and shoot down any native that tries to go near it and just confiscate it. Right?
I guess. I mean...
That's me being ruthless right now, but, like, if that was me, I wouldn't burn it.
Literally, though, it's like, literally, unless you kill every single last person on that island other than in your group, it's an island. If that doesn't go well, right? It's like punching a guy in an elevator.
But
like,
that's just it. It is an island, and if you kill off enough people, then they become the minority, and you're the majority. So, and you have weapons.
I guess that would be the only rationale.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, it's very poor judgment.
It's really dumb, is what I would say.
So that's, yeah, so we've got the original Roanoke chief was beheaded a few years earlier. You had crops burnt previously, and now you have it again.
Terrible. So this is not good. I'm assuming word is getting around these people suck.
Yes.
And so, honestly, yeah, so obviously hostilities heightened with the natives. And White, he does try to explain that it was a mistake, and he essentially...
I didn't mean to kill you. Well, I meant to do it
to the other
your
guy
other close
over there.
relatives.
Yeah, like, no big deal, right?
Great.
But he does sort of dampen the fire, so to speak, a little bit, but it's still very uncertain. And he puts the colonists in a very, very touchy situation, I would say.
Yeah, and it's made a little more touchy with the fact that
there's a new baby.
Yeah.
The first baby. Virginia Dare is born on August 18th, 1587.
Yeah. So now he has a granddaughter in the New World.
It's a new stake, eh? Like, that's raising it. You know what I mean?
And it is pretty profound. Like, just to reiterate again, the first ever born English citizen in the New World. Ever.
And there's so many mythologies that have sprouted up around her since.
She's a character in poems and plays and books and things like that. She's...
Oh, even in Interstellar? What's her name? Anne Hathaway's character is... Actually, no.
She's named Eleanor.
No. She's not named Eleanor. She's named Amelia. I got that wrong.
Oh, sorry. We were mixing that up because there was an Amelia Earhart reference in as one of the theories here.
Yeah.
But no, but Virginia Dare is referenced in a ton of stuff.
Right.
And
she's even once referenced as like maybe a rival to Pocahontas.
Yeah, used in a story which is kind of interesting. It's like, I don't know, that fits into that story pretty well.
It does. So anyways, White decides it is time. Well, I don't know if he decides or if the colony decides it's time that he needs to go back to England. And
well, that's controversy there, right?
Well, that's just it too, because like, are they trying to push him out because he's so heavy-handed? Is he the most suitable because he can rally for supplies and for other supports for them? And on top of that, he can relay the fact that Fernandez was so much of a a negative factor in this whole thing.
Yeah. By all accounts, from what I came across, like the people really insisted that he go. And it's just a question of whether or not they thought, okay, we're insisting that you, John White, go because you're the most capable, or we want you to go because things are already bad and you're making it worse.
You're basically just mucking it up.
I don't know the exact age of John White at this time.
I'm assuming he's a little elderly. He's not a grandchild, man.
Well, I mean, it is back in the day. Like, people
he's probably in his 50s.
You know, that reminds me of, like, What We Do in the Shadows, where he's like, that is why I always look 16. And he looks like he's, like, 40. And it's like, of course, in those days, life was tough for a 16-year-old. but I don't know exactly how old he was, but... That's a kind of a question for me, though. It's like, okay, are you really the best person to be sent back? Like, obviously, to make negotiation. Yeah. But that's sort of an important role where you are, too.
True.
Right? Like, presumably there would be another person out of the 117 that would be able to help command a ship to get back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay, so this guy was born in 1540, John White. So at this time, he is...
So he's in his, like, early 50s then? Is that what that would be?
Whoa, it says here apparently he died at the age of 52 to 53, and the year was 1593.
Well, he died right after he
died
came
right
back.
after. Okay.
He came back, it was just 3 years later.
3 years later, right?
He never knew what happened. But...
So he's so he's in his late 40s this time.
Okay. So for those days, let's call that, like, early 70s.
You're a senior.
You're a senior. I mean, you're going on an Atlantic voyage. It ain't easy, you know what I mean?
Ain't easy being Parcheesi. Don't know where that came from.
So we basically, this is where we sort of wind down this first episode here.
Well, but okay, so yeah. Like we discussed, it's kind of debatable why he was sent.
Yeah.
But when he is sent and he arrives on English shores, he finds England in the middle of preparation for war with the Spanish Armada. That's the classic. Everyone knows that.
They're going to war with Prince Philip.
Exactly. And that, again, is detailed quite extensively in Elizabeth the Golden Age, I believe.
Yes.
So Prince Philip amassed over 300 ships of various sizes, and basically, I can't remember how, I believe what happened was the English, they took the battle into the channel, so it was a narrow, it was exactly like 300, right?
Yeah.
Where it was like that strategic thing where it's a narrow thing, so you're just like basically
so the numbers didn't matter.
And the long range guns of the English were no match for, other way around. The long range guns of the English outmatched and destroyed.
Yeah, so like Philip, he had this massive fleet, and I believe the story goes that basically the battle in the Channel took place, and there wasn't a single English ship that was harmed.
But over half of the Spanish were destroyed.
Yeah. So they weren't that great.
No.
At sea battles.
But that sucks, right? Because John White, he knows the colonists are in dire straits.
Yeah.
He knows he needs to get back right away. And he can't. He's stuck there for 3 years.
Yeah, and he even implored Sir Walter Raleigh as well, who actually did advocate on his behalf and went to the Queen. And
but she didn't want to spare a single ship.
He was the one person that could have made that happen. You know, and
I'd have to agree.
There's some questions about that too, and again, like, we're excited to get into the second part because that comes up too. But he was the only person really that could have made it happen, and to think that like you couldn't spare one ship, like you're trying to establish a colony that is also attacking Spanish ships in the New World. You think that maybe making sure that the 117 people and the money you've already spent over there would be worth just one ship.
I know, but that just speaks to, in my mind, it speaks to the idea that at this point, Elizabeth's ambitions have turned. Obviously, she's still focused on the Spanish. The Spanish are coming to get them. I would imagine that Philip is a little ticked off about the fact that they've been plundering their ships for all this time. So that kind of plays into it,
She wanted to cover
too.
her bases, I guess.
Well, exactly. So she's taken a break from plundering in order to take care of the Spanish Armada, decimate them, and then go back to what she was used to before. Right. Or maybe, if she can, slide into a few of those South American colonies and all that kind of stuff and start reaping the benefits herself.
That would probably be...
That would be my move.
That would have been the mindset, I'm sure.
But honestly, though, maybe not, because if they've already established all these relations and all these settlements and everything, it might be best just to get them while they're on the way out. Which is that was the easiest way to go, so that's what she was doing.
Yeah.
Ruthless.
Very. So 3 years pass, the English defeat the Spanish, and finally, John White's able to find a ship. It doesn't end up being a ship that he himself captains, but he ends up finding a ship, and he's finally able to go back.
So what would he find when he returned? What became of the colonists?
Yeah.
It's a mystery.
Definitely. So that brings us to the end of part 1, and that is the lead up and the backstory to the lost colony of Roanoke.
Mm-hmm.
So next week we will be back with part 2, and we're getting into the real meat of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what John White discovers when he heads back, and the craziness that ensues, and the theories behind this legend.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for listening, and until next week on Into the Portal.
Until next time.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.